Settle in and let your thoughts drift as we walk quietly through the hidden corners of the Pokémon world. These aren't the common stories everyone knows. They're the obscure details, the forgotten notes, and the strange secrets buried deep inside the games and their history. Did you know that Gyarados wasn't always the blue serpent we know today? In the earliest sketches, it was drawn in shades of green, more like a dragon pulled from old legends of the sea. Only later did the developers give it the deep blue body that made it iconic. And tucked away inside Pokémon Stadium lies a tiny oversight. Porygon, the digital Pokémon, was coded without the ability to use its own signature move, conversion. Imagine that! The one Pokémon built to rewrite itself was locked out of its own specialty. Shuckle, the quiet little bug that most trainers overlook, actually holds a record no other Pokémon can touch. By stacking items, boosts, and one perfectly timed hit, Shuckle can unleash the single highest damage number in the history of the games, a strike so powerful it climbs into the hundreds of millions. Even the simplest things hide mysteries. Deep in the original red and green code, there's data for a fishing rod that could be used indoors. It was never finished, never added, but somewhere in the design room, someone imagined what it would feel like to fish from inside a Pokémon Center. And the safari zone you walk through in Fuchsia City? It was once meant to stretch below the ground, with tunnels leading to rare encounters. The idea was abandoned when memory on the tiny cartridge ran out, leaving only the surface for players to explore. Some facts are darker. Poliwag's Pokédex notes that the swirl on its belly isn't just decoration. It's its intestines, visible through its thin skin. A detail easy to overlook, yet quietly unsettling once you notice it. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are named after Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan in the West. But in Japan, their names were different. Ebiwala and Sawamura, nods to different fighters entirely. A reminder that even names can shift depending on where the games travel. And in the gold and silver prototypes, a small electric tiger cub named Katora was designed, fully drawn, and almost added to the roster. But in the final release, it vanished, left behind only in sketches and memory. Wailord, the gentle giant of the seas, is nearly 50 feet long, yet according to its official stats, it weighs less than 1,000 pounds, lighter than the tongue of a real blue whale, a creature larger than a bus, yet floating like a balloon across the ocean. And then there's the ghost girl in Lumiose City. No footsteps, no music, no warning. She drifts silently behind you, says a few words, and disappears forever. She has no explanation anywhere in the game. One of the strangest phantoms ever left in Pokemon's world. Ghastly's Pokédex suggests it can suffocate its victims by wrapping them in gas, stopping their breath in minutes. If taken literally, Ghastly is one of the most dangerous Pokémon in existence. Proof that behind the cartoonish designs, some lore is darker than expected. Farfetch'd carries a leak because of a Japanese saying, "A duck comes bearing green onions." It describes something too convenient, too good to be true. The Pokémon itself is a pun, a living proverb baked into the game's design. Even the move splash hides a translation mistake. In Japanese, it's closer to hop, which is why Magikarp, Hoppip, and Spoink all use it. But once the move was translated to English, the watery connotation stuck, even for creatures with no connection to water at all. Black and White included one of the strangest optional stories. In the Strange House, a locked room contains scribbled notes about a young girl's tragic fate. No quest marker, no major dialogue, just eerie fragments left for careful players to uncover. And then there's Missing No, the infamous glitch. It isn't just an accident. It's the result of the game trying to read data from empty slots in memory. By walking along Cinnabar Island's coast, players accidentally peeked behind the curtain, exposing the fragile scaffolding of the code itself. Cubone remains one of the most haunting designs. Known as the Lonely Pokémon, it wears the skull of its dead mother. The lore never softens that fact, never replaces it with something gentler. A creature born from grief, carrying the past on its head forever. In the anime, Brock is revealed to have 9 siblings. In the games, he only mentions a brother and sister. The larger family was created for television, expanding his role into caretaker of a bustling household. Even stranger, in the Pokémon manga, violence is far less censored. Arbok is sliced in half in one scene, a level of brutality unthinkable in the main games or anime, proof that different branches of the franchise aren't afraid to tread into darker territory. And Jinx, too, holds a strange history. In her earliest sprite, her skin was black. Controversy over the design later forced the colour to be changed to purple, a redesign that quietly rewrote her identity across every appearance that followed. In the earliest Pokémon designs, Raiden was the very first creature drawn. It's why, in the first games, the statues in gyms often resemble its horned silhouette. Raiden wasn't just another Pokémon. It was the foundation stone for the entire Pokédex. Ditto, the strange little blob, has more in common with Mew than most realize. They share almost identical weights, the same base stats, and even the same shade of pink in some sprites. Many fans believe Ditto is nothing more than the result of failed cloning experiments, early attempts at recreating Mew that went wrong. In Pokémon Yellow, if you walk into the Safari Zone's rest house and then immediately leave, you'll sometimes find yourself back in Fuchsia City with your Safari game timer still running. It's one of many quiet coding quirks buried in the Game Boy cartridge. Kadabra, the psychic Pokémon holding its silver spoon, became the subject of a real-world lawsuit. A magician claimed its likeness was copied directly from his image. The dispute was serious enough that Kadabra cards stopped being printed for nearly 20 years, making them some of the rarest cards in circulation. Drifloon's design looks playful, like a balloon floating on the wind. But the Pokédex tells a darker story. Children who grab its string risk being carried away, never to return. A gentle, drifting balloon with a sinister fate tied to its ribbon. In Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, the original Game Boy Advance wireless adapter allowed players to enter a special union room. Hidden inside the code are unused tiles, suggesting the room was once planned to be larger, with extra features that never made it into the final release. Pikachu's cry has always been unique. In the early games, every Pokémon had digitized beeps and chirps, but Pikachu's voice actress Ikue Otani eventually recorded the lines directly. By the time of Pokémon Yellow, Pikachu was the only Pokémon to speak its name inside the game. Some of the earliest promotional art for Pokémon featured Venomoth standing alongside Sabrina, the psychic gym leader. Yet in the game, her team uses Venomoth only inconsistently, leading many fans to speculate that Butterfree and Venomoth's evolutionary lines may have been swapped late in development. Unown, the mysterious letters hidden in the ruins of Alph, spell out more than just the alphabet. If you translate the patterns on the walls, they whisper eerie messages. Our words shall remain here for eternity. Messages most players never stop to decode. The anime once showed James of Team Rocket owning a Koffing, but early concept art reveals he was originally meant to carry a Ghastly. The change was made to balance the team's dynamics and keep the tone lighter for younger viewers. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, the Mirage Tower appears and disappears depending on random conditions. But inside the code, the tower always exists. It's just invisible until the game decides to show it. A reminder that even random mysteries are built on hidden certainty. Arcanine, often mistaken as a legendary beast, has the classification Legendary Pokémon in its Pokédex entry, yet it was never coded as one. This quirk has caused debates for decades. Was Arcanine originally planned as a true legendary before being rebalanced into an ordinary evolution? The Pokémon anime's earliest pilot episode, created before the series aired, featured a completely different opening and several unused characters. Almost none of that footage has ever been shown publicly, making it one of the rarest pieces of lost Pokémon media. Parasect, the mushroom Pokémon, has one of the most chilling Pokédex entries of all. It says the mushroom has completely taken over its host's body. The Paras underneath is essentially dead, leaving only a fungal shell that shuffles on instinct. Voltorb resembles a Pokeball, but in the original games, its discovery was explained as an accident, a Pokeball exposed to a strange energy. Voltorb may not be a naturally occurring creature at all, but rather a technological mishap given life. in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. If you stand near the bell tower at certain times of day, the music subtly changes, adding a faint chime that isn't present anywhere else in the game. Most players rush past, never noticing the detail. Mimikyu wears its ragged Pikachu disguise to make friends, but the Pokédex warns that anyone who looks under the cloth meets a horrible fate. Its design is cute, but its lore is one of the darkest in the entire series. Shelder, the clam Pokémon, is tied to more than one evolution. It clamps to Slowpoke's tail to create Slowbro, and its bite evolves it further into Slowking when a special item is used. Shelder's entire purpose seems bound to altering the fates of other Pokémon. In the beta versions of Gold and Silver, there were once plans for a skateboard to replace the bicycle. Players could ride it across slopes and small ledges, but the feature was cut before release, leaving only scraps of data behind. In the anime, Pidgeotto evolves into Pidgey under Ash's care, but Ash promises to return for it, and never does. This unresolved storyline remains one of the longest unaddressed threads in the entire show. A glitch in Pokémon Emerald allows players to clone Pokémon inside the battle tower by carefully saving and resetting. For years, this was one of the most used exploits in the community, creating endless supplies of rare items and creatures. Gengar's shadowy design is often paired with Clefable's round, fairy-like form. Some fans speculate that Gengar is literally Clefable's shadow, a theory, supported by their matching body outlines and opposing typings. The Pokémon anime once broadcast an episode called The Legend of Dratini, but it was never aired outside Japan due to scenes of a character pointing a firearm directly at Ash and his friends. The footage remains banned internationally. Chandelure's Pokédex entries describe it stealing the souls of those it burns, leaving behind only empty husks. For a Pokémon shaped like a chandelier, its lore borders on terrifying. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres all end with uno, dos, and tres, the Spanish words for 1, 2, and 3. A quiet naming pattern that hints at their connection before the games ever explain it. Mr. Mime's Japanese name is Barriered, referencing its ability to create invisible walls. But when translated, Mr. Mime stuck, locking the character into a gender that later caused oddities when female Mr. Mime appeared. The Pokémon Ditto appears in many places, but one of its rarest forms is in Pokémon XD, Gale of Darkness, where a Shadow Ditto can be purified. Few players ever encountered it, making it one of the strangest twists for the otherwise common creature. An unused track of music was discovered in the data of Diamond and Pearl. It's eerie and unfinished, leading many to believe it was once meant for a cut area or a ghostly encounter. Its true purpose has never been confirmed. Tauros originally had no evolution or counterpart, but in Scarlet and Violet, it finally received regional forms. For decades, it stood alone, a relic of Generation 1 that felt incomplete until new games filled the gap. The Lake of Rage, home to the red Gyarados, was the first guaranteed shiny Pokémon encounter. This scripted event introduced many players to the concept of shinies, though the games never explained what made it different. Magneton, made of 3 Magnemite fused together, weighs 10 times more than the combined weight of its parts. A strange inconsistency that suggests its magnetic field adds invisible mass. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, an NPC in the thrifty Megamart speaks as though they are aware they're inside a video game. It's one of the few times Pokémon breaks the fourth wall directly. Abra is famous for teleporting away, but its Pokédex explains why. It spends 18 hours of the day asleep, and when it senses danger even in dreams, it teleports without waking up. The Safari Zone in Gold and Silver was completely inaccessible, its gates locked. But unused assets show it was originally planned to return, only to be cut at the last minute. In Pokémon Snap, if you play the Poké Flute near sleeping Snorlax, it awakens and begins to dance joyfully. The animation became so beloved that later games referenced it with Snorlax dance. Pose's Cubone's cry in the early games is eerily similar to Charmander's. Some players theorize that Cubone was originally meant to be related to Charmander's line before its tragic lore was written in. Zubat appears in almost every cave, but in Pokémon Black and White, it's completely absent. For the first time, caves were filled with different species, shocking players who had grown used to Zubat swarms for generations. The move Guillotine is one of the earliest examples of a one-hit KO attack, but in the Pokémon Adventures manga, it's depicted literally, a horrifying guillotine blade summoned in battle. Rotom, the mischievous ghost electric type, can possess different household appliances. But in early drafts, it was also considered for a washing machine form that had no eyes, making it too eerie for release. Lugia was designed not by the main Pokémon art team, but by the anime creators for the movie, Pokémon, The Power of One. Its design was so popular that it became canon in the games afterward. The Pokémon Missing No can corrupt Hall of Fame data when encountered. Players who discovered it sometimes saw scrambled sprites of trainers and Pokémon, an accidental window into the fragile memory of the cartridge. In the anime, Meowth's ability to speak human language is never fully explained. Unlike other Pokémon, he learned it by himself out of love for a female Meowth, a detail that adds a bittersweet layer to his comic role. In the earliest versions of Gold and Silver, the developers designed a safari-style zone called the Beta Safari. Its layout was larger and stranger than anything in Kanto, but it was cut when the Johto map had to be compressed to fit alongside Kanto. Only leftover tiles and sketches remain. Tangela, the vine-covered Pokémon, hides a secret. Official notes once described a humanoid body under the vines, but it has never been shown. The vines serve as a disguise, keeping Tangela's true form forever out of sight. The Pokémon anime originally portrayed Clefairy as Ash's partner in the pilot drafts. Pikachu was added later, chosen because its yellow fur would stand out against backgrounds on older television screens. That decision transformed Pikachu into the face of the franchise. Regigigas, the colossal golem, is said to have pulled continents across the earth with ropes. This mythical feat makes it one of the strongest Pokémon in lore, even though its in-game ability, Slow Start, keeps it from ever living up to that story. The earliest sprite for Charizard in Pokémon Red looks slimmer and far less imposing than later designs. Over time, Charizard's wings grew larger, its jaw sharper, and its posture more intimidating, reshaping it into the icon recognized today. In Pokémon Platinum, a room in the old chateau holds a painting with eyes that follow the player. The eerie effect disappears when you leave, and it is never explained. Many believe it to be one of the earliest deliberate ghost scares in the series. Gardevoir is described in its Pokédex as willing to give its life to protect its trainer. One entry even claims it can create a black hole in battle, a level of cosmic power never shown on screen. Kangaskhan has long been linked to Cubone by fan theories. The baby in Kangaskhan's pouch resembles Cubone without its skull helmet, and the theory suggests Cubone is simply a Kangaskhan child whose mother died. Game Freak has never confirmed beeps and chirps, but Pikachu's voice actress Ikue Otani eventually recorded the lines directly. By the time of Pokémon Yellow, Pikachu was the only Pokémon to speak its name inside the game. Some of the earliest promotional art for Pokémon featured Venomoth standing alongside Sabrina, the psychic gym leader. Yet in the game, her team uses Venomoth only inconsistently, leading many fans to speculate that Butterfree and Venomoth's evolutionary lines may have been swapped late in development. Unknown, the mysterious letters hidden in the ruins of Alph, spell out more than just the alphabet. If you translate the patterns on the walls, they whisper eerie messages. Our words shall remain here for eternity. Messages most players never stop to decode. The anime once showed James of Team Rocket owning a Koffing, but early concept art reveals he was originally meant to carry a Ghastly. The change was made to balance the team's dynamics and keep the tone lighter for younger viewers. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, The Mirage Tower appears and disappears depending on random conditions, but inside the code, the tower always exists. It's just invisible until the game decides to show it, a reminder that even random mysteries are built on hidden certainty. Arcanine, often mistaken as a legendary beast, has the classification Legendary Pokémon in its Pokédex entry, yet it was never coded as one. This quirk has caused debates for decades. Was Arcanine originally planned as a true legendary before being rebalanced into an ordinary evolution? The Pokémon anime's earliest pilot episode, created before the series aired, featured a completely different opening and several unused characters. Almost none of that footage has ever been shown publicly, making it one of the rarest pieces of lost Pokémon media. Parasect, the mushroom Pokémon, has one of the most chilling Pokédex entries of all. It says the mushroom has completely taken over its host's body. The Paras underneath is essentially dead, leaving only a fungal shell that shuffles on instinct. Voltorb resembles a Pokéball, but in the original games, its discovery was explained as an accident, a Pokéball exposed to a strange energy. Voltorb may not be a naturally occurring creature at all, but rather a technological mishap given life. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, if you stand near the bell tower at certain times of day, the music subtly changes, adding a faint chime that isn't present anywhere else in the game. Most players rush past, never noticing the detail. Mimikyu wears its ragged Pikachu disguise to make friends, but the Pokédex warns that anyone who looks under the cloth meets a horrible fate. Its design is cute, but its lore is one of the darkest in the entire series. Shelder, the clam Pokémon, is tied to more than one evolution. It clamps to Slowpoke's tail to create Slowbro, and its bite evolves it further into Slowking when a special item is used. Shelder's entire purpose seems bound to altering the fates of other Pokémon. In the beta versions of Gold and Silver, there were once plans for a skateboard to replace the bicycle. Players could ride it across slopes and small ledges, but the feature was cut before release, leaving only scraps of data behind. In the anime, Pidgeotto evolves into Pidgeot under Ash's care, but Ash promises to return for it and never does. This unresolved storyline remains one of the longest unaddressed threads in the entire show. A glitch in Pokémon Emerald allows players to clone Pokémon inside the battle tower by carefully saving and resetting. For years, this was one of the most used exploits in the community, creating endless supplies of rare items and creatures. Jenga's shadowy design is often paired with Clefable's round, fairy-like form. Some fans speculate that Gengar is literally Clefable's shadow, a theory supported by their matching body outlines and opposing typings. The Pokémon anime once broadcast an episode called The Legend of Dratini, but it was never aired outside Japan due to scenes of a character pointing a firearm directly at Ash and his friends. The footage remains banned internationally. Chandeleur's Pokédex entries describe it stealing the souls of those it burns, leaving behind only empty husks. For a Pokémon shaped like a chandelier, its lore borders on terrifying. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres all end with uno, dos, and tres, the Spanish words for 1, 2, and 3. A quiet naming pattern that hints at their connection before the games ever explain it. Mr. Mime's Japanese name is barriered, referencing its ability to create invisible walls, but when translated, Mr. Mime stuck, locking the character into a gender that later caused oddities when female Mr. Mime appeared. The Pokémon Ditto appears in many places, but one of its rarest forms is in Pokémon XD, Gale of Darkness, where a Shadow Ditto can be purified. Few players ever encountered it, making it one of the strangest twists for the otherwise common creature. An unused track of music was discovered in the data of Diamond and Pearl. It's eerie and unfinished, leading many to believe it was once meant for a cut area or a ghostly encounter. Its true purpose has never been confirmed. Tauros originally had no evolution or counterpart, but in Scarlet and Violet it finally received regional forms. For decades, It stood alone, a relic of Generation 1 that felt incomplete until new games filled the gap. The Lake of Rage, home to the red Gyarados, was the first guaranteed shiny Pokémon encounter. This scripted event introduced many players to the concept of shinies, though the games never explained what made it different. Magneton, made of 3 Magnemite fused together, weighs 10 times more than the combined weight of its parts, a strange inconsistency that suggests its magnetic field adds invisible mass. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, an NPC in the thrifty Megamart speaks as though they are aware they're inside a video game. It's one of the few times Pokémon breaks the fourth wall directly. Abra is famous for teleporting away, but its Pokédex explains why. It spends 18 hours of the day asleep, and when it senses danger even in dreams, it teleports without waking up. The Safari Zone in Gold and Silver was completely inaccessible, its gates locked. But unused assets show it was originally planned to return, only to be cut at the last minute. In Pokémon Snap, if you play the Pokéflute near sleeping Snorlax, it awakens and begins to dance joyfully. The animation became so beloved that later games referenced it with Snorlax dance. Poses Cabone's cry in the early games is eerily similar to Charmander's. Some players theorized that Cubone was originally meant to be related to Charmander's. Line before its tragic lore was written in Zubat, appears in almost every cave. But in Pokémon Black and White, it's completely absent. For the first time, caves were filled with different species, shocking players who had grown used to Zubat swarms for generations. The move Guillotine is one of the earliest examples of a one-hit KO attack, but in the Pokémon Adventures manga, it's depicted literally. A horrifying guillotine blade summoned in battle. Rotom, the mischievous ghost electric type, can possess different household appliances, but in early drafts, it was also considered for a washing machine form that had no eyes, making it too eerie for release. Lugia was designed not by the main Pokémon art team, but by the anime creators for the movie, Pokémon: The Power of One. Its design was so popular that it became canon in the games afterward. The Pokémon Missing No can corrupt Hall of Fame data when encountered. Players who discovered it sometimes saw scrambled sprites of trainers and Pokémon, an accidental window into the fragile memory of the cartridge. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Sabrina once uses her psychic powers to merge with her own Pokémon, creating a disturbing hybrid image of trainer and creature. This darker tone never appeared in the games or the anime, but it remains one of the series' strangest artistic choices. Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur were originally drawn with far more plant-like features. Early sketches showed vines growing from their backs in wilder patterns, almost overtaking their bodies, before being refined into the simpler bulb and flower design. In Pokémon Colosseum, the player's starter Pokémon are not the usual cute companions, but Umbreon and Espeon, 2 evolved forms rarely given so early in a story. This unusual choice made the game feel instantly different, darker, and more mature. Machamp's Pokédex says it can throw 1,000 punches in just 2 seconds. If you calculate that, it equals over 8 punches every frame on a Game Boy screen, a stat that is more terrifying than impressive once imagined in real time. The Pokémon Sudowoodo looks like a tree, but it's actually a rock type. Its disguise is a defense mechanism, meant to trick enemies into thinking it's part of the forest until it suddenly lashes out. Lickitung's tongue is said to be twice the length of its body. The Pokédex even claims that once it licks something, it leaves behind a tingling or numb feeling that can last for hours. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the wild area features weather changes that sometimes create impossible conditions, like snow falling in one part of a field, while bright sunlight shines only a few steps away. This surreal effect became a meme among fans. Scyther, the Mantis Pokémon, evolves into Scizor when traded holding a metal coat. But lore suggests Scizor is not simply stronger, it's slower, because the weight of its steel body drags it down despite its sharper claws. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon explores concepts the main series avoids. In one storyline, an entire world is on the brink of collapse, and Pokémon openly fear their own extinction. For a series usually filled with bright tones, it's one of the heaviest arcs ever written. The Pokémon anime once depicted Porygon in an episode infamous for causing seizures in hundreds of children due to flashing lights. That single episode was banned worldwide and effectively ended Porygon's appearances in the series. Lapras. Name is thought to come from the English phrase lapras, meaning lap or lap through the sea, though some believe it also references Loch Ness, the famous mythical monster said to inhabit a Scottish lake. The Pokémon Spiritomb is said to be formed from 108 separate spirits bound to a keystone. Its base stat total is also 108, and it was originally entry number 108 in the Pokédex, a rare case where gameplay and lore align perfectly. Pokémon Gold and Silver were nearly the last games in the series. The developers planned Johto as the finale, but after their success, the franchise continued, expanding far beyond what anyone first imagined. The Pokémon Regis is said to have been born during an ice age. Its body is composed of a material harder than any known substance on Earth, and the lore says even fire cannot melt it. In the early Pokémon card game, the original holographic Charizard became a cultural phenomenon. Copies sold for hundreds of dollars in the 1990s, and today, mint editions sell for tens of thousands. Bennett's Pokédex entry reveals it was once an abandoned doll. Fueled by hatred for the child that discarded it, the toy came to life as a ghost, forever cursed to seek revenge. One of the most unsettling theories in the fanbase is that Wobbuffet's true body is not the large blue figure, but the tiny black tail attached to it. If true, everything we see on the battlefield is just a decoy. In the early Pokémon Stadium games, some moves had exaggerated 3D animations. Thunder, for example, would call down a bolt that lit up the entire screen, a level of spectacle that impressed players at the time, even if it seems simple now. Chansey's eggs are said to be filled with happiness itself. Trainers and Pokémon that eat them are described as instantly revitalized, turning the gentle pink creature into a walking symbol of healing. The Pokémon Shedinja appears when Nincada evolves into Ninjask, leaving behind a hollow shell. The lore says anyone who peers into the crack on its back will lose their soul. Dratini's Pokédex describes it as shedding its skin continuously as it grows, leaving behind husks of its former self along riverbanks. This detail gives it an almost snake-like mythology. Mawile is inspired by the Japanese folklore creature called the Futakuchi Onna, a woman with a second mouth on the back of her head. Its sweet face and monstrous jaws are drawn directly from this myth. In Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, a hidden island called Birth Island could only be accessed with a special event ticket distributed at rare promotions. On it, players could capture Deoxys, making it one of the most exclusive encounters of the era. The Pokémon Darkrai is said to cause endless nightmares to anyone near it. Yet in the anime, it is shown to be more misunderstood than malicious, trapped by the power it cannot control. Magikarp is considered useless by most trainers, but in ancient Chinese legend, a carp that leaps over the Dragon Gate becomes a dragon. Gyarados is that legend made literal, a weak fish transforming into a monster. Pokémon Diamond and Pearl introduced Rotom, a ghost that can inhabit machines. In early drafts, it was designed to haunt television specifically, a reference to Japanese ghost stories about spirits emerging from screens. The Pokémon Absol is said to appear only when disasters are about to strike. Villagers often feared it, believing it caused tragedy, when in fact, it may have only been a warning of what was coming. In one of the early anime movies, a Slowking speaks fluent human language. Unlike Meowth, it isn't explained. It simply talks, leaving fans puzzled as to why this Pokémon, and not others, was given a voice. The Pokémon Diglett has never had its full body revealed. Some believe it has tiny legs beneath the ground, while others think it's serpentine, stretching much farther than its head suggests. Heatran is unique among legendaries in that it has a gender. It can be male or female, unlike most other legendary Pokémon, which are genderless. In Pokémon X and Y, AZ is revealed to be over 3,000 years old, having created a weapon of destruction that ended a war. His design marked one of the most somber storylines in any mainline game. The Pokémon Hooper is tied to myths of genies and tricksters. Its unbound form is massive, wielding giant golden rings that can summon entire objects and creatures across dimensions. Manaphy is unique in that it can breed with Ditto to produce Firony, but Firony can never evolve back into Manaphy. This one-way relationship is unlike any other in the series. Bidoof, often treated as a joke Pokémon, became a meme embraced by the Pokémon Company itself. Official artwork, merchandise, and even a holiday have been made to celebrate its goofy image. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, a side quest involves a man searching for his lost Pyukumuku. The dialogue, short as it is, adds a surprising note of melancholy to an otherwise light-hearted game. The Pokémon Cryogonal is made entirely of ice crystals. Its Pokédex says it can freeze its opponents instantly, trapping them in prisms of ice. Despite its cold lore, it rarely appears in games, keeping it obscure. Uxie, one of the Lake Guardians, is said to erase the memories of those who see its eyes. The games never show this directly, leaving it as a chilling implication buried in text. The Pokémon anime once featured giant versions of ordinary Pokémon, like an enormous Dragonite that towered over buildings. These were never explained, and the idea was later abandoned. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the character Ball Guy wears a giant Pokeball costume and appears at stadiums. He quickly became a fan favorite, blending comedy with the surreal. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, if you search through the Canalave library, you'll find hidden books that tell unsettling folk tales. One story describes a Pokémon that licks a person's shadow, and within days, the victim dies. Another hints at a monster that eats travelers whole. Stories presented as children's folklore, but never tied to any specific species, leaving them drifting as unanswered fragments of Sinnoh's mythology. The Pokémon Cacturne is said to follow travelers through the desert at night. When exhaustion sets in, it attacks, preying on those too weak to defend themselves. Its unsettling smile hides a reputation as one of the most predatory grass types in the Pokédex. Rotom's appliance forms introduced in Platinum were more than just gimmicks. Each one represented everyday objects behaving unnaturally. A washing machine spraying electrical storms, a fan whipping up cyclones. The inspiration came from Japanese ghost stories, where spirits inhabit household items. Called Tsukumogami in Pokémon Sun and Moon, the trainer, Hao's grandfather, is mentioned to be a kahuna who stepped down. This tiny detail hints at a history of Alola's guardianship, suggesting traditions long before the player ever arrives. The Pokémon Frostmoth, gentle in appearance, has a chilling Pokédex entry. It says its wings can freeze everything they touch, and that it patrols snowy mountains with an elegance that belies its lethal nature. In Pokémon Black and White, Ophiuchid City changes entirely depending on the version. In Black, the city appears modern and futuristic, filled with neon blue designs. In White, it becomes rustic and traditional, with wooden textures and older architecture. This split version of a single location is unique across the entire franchise. The Pokémon Druddigon, with its jagged body and glaring eyes, is said to live inside caves, where it remains completely still to absorb heat from the sun-warmed stone. Its design was based on gargoyle statues, blending European architecture with dragon myth. The Safari Zone in Kanto features signs that read, "Throw rocks at the Pokémon to make them easier to catch." But mechanically, throwing rocks actually makes them more likely to flee, a design quirk that confuses players even today. The Pokémon Xatu is described as standing still all day, staring at the sun. Its lore says it can see both the past and the future, explaining its eerie, motionless behavior. Despite this profound description, in-game, it remains a fragile bird, seldom used in battles. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, there is a hidden room in the Tin Tower that can only be reached by using glitches. Inside are unfinished tiles and strange layouts, leftovers of an area that was restructured before the final release. The Pokémon Bruxish, with its garish colors and sharp teeth, is based on the real-world reef triggerfish, known in Hawaii as Humuhumunukunukuapua'a. Its design, while often mocked, reflects the vibrant and sometimes unsettling beauty of tropical fish. A trainer in Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire mentions that his Zigzagoon once found something amazing using the pickup ability. He never says what it was, leaving a curious line of dialogue that has puzzled players for years. The Pokémon Gligar glides by, using the wings on its arms like sails. Its design combines a scorpion and a bat, but its Pokédex says it clamps onto prey's faces, an image far darker than its playful animations suggest. In Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, an unused map for the Sivai Islands remains buried in the code. This unfinished zone suggests the developers had plans for more content, cut only due to time constraints. The Pokémon Cofagrigus was given a Pokédex entry that says it once lured grave robbers with promises of treasure, only to swallow them alive. Its golden sarcophagus design is based on Egyptian burial practices, twisted into something predatory. In Pokémon Platinum, the distortion world where Giratina dwells defies the normal laws of physics. Gravity shifts, waterfalls flow sideways, and platforms hover in the void. This environment was so experimental for the DS hardware that it remains one of the most surreal locations in the series. The Pokémon Slugma is said to be composed entirely of magma. Its Pokédex claims that if it ever cooled, it would turn solid and die. This explains why Slugma cannot be found in colder regions, a rare case where lore restricts distribution. In Pokémon Colosseum, the Shadow Pokémon mechanic introduced corruption into the lore. Pokémon stripped of their emotions became weapons, with glowing red eyes and violent temperaments. The concept was far darker than anything shown in the mainline games of the time. The Pokémon Drifblim is often depicted floating gently in the wind, but the Pokédex explains it carries people away, sometimes entire groups, before drifting off course and vanishing. Its cute balloon-like design hides a reputation as a kidnapper of the skies. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the Isle of Armor expansion introduces Kubfu, a legendary given to the player as a companion. Unlike most legendaries, Kubfu is raised like a traditional starter, forming a bond before evolving into Urshifu. This intimate approach to a legendary was a first for the series. The Pokémon Palossand, a living sandcastle, is said to be created from the grudges of children who drowned on beaches. Its lore describes it pulling people into its body and consuming their life force, transforming an innocent shape into a predatory ghost. In Pokémon Black and White, Castelia City is home to an alleyway where a mysterious man gives the player an item without explanation. The encounter has no follow-up, existing as a fragment of strangeness in the middle of a bustling metropolis. The Pokémon Octillery evolves from Remoraid, a fish, into an octopus. The connection seems illogical, but early concept art shows the line designed as a fish-shaped gun evolving into a cannon-shaped octopus, a visual metaphor dropped in later drafts. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, if you leave your game idle in the old chateau, sometimes a ghostly girl or butler will appear briefly before vanishing. These events have no dialogue or explanation, making them some of the eeriest jump scares in the series. The Pokémon Kamala spends its entire life asleep, clinging to a wooden log. Its Pokédex suggests that it dreams constantly, and no one has ever seen it wake. This makes it one of the only creatures defined entirely by eternal slumber. In the Generation 1 games, the move substitute creates a decoy doll that absorbs damage. But the design of the doll doesn't match any known Pokémon, leading fans to speculate it may be based on a cut creature that never made it into the game. The Pokémon Zygarde has multiple forms, from tiny cells to its complete 100% state. Its lore describes it as a guardian of ecosystem balance, but its fragmented design makes it one of the most complex legendaries ever created. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, a locked door in the Trick House hints at more rooms to explore. Yet no matter how many puzzles you solve, the final door never opens, a silent reminder of unfinished plans. The Pokémon Hatterene is described as attacking those who make loud noises. Its lore paints it as a quiet forest witch, punishing anyone who disturbs its solitude with ruthless psychic power. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, the Pokédex describes Gengar hiding in the shadows of people at night, waiting to attack them. This transforms its mischievous grin into something far more sinister when read carefully. The Pokémon Melton, while small, is said to consume metal in large quantities. Groups of Melton can merge into a giant form known as Melmetal, one of the few Pokémon evolutions shown as a literal fusion of individuals. In the anime, Sabrina's Dollhouse episode depicts her turning people into toys, one of the most unsettling moments in the series. The image of Ash and his friends transformed into miniature dolls remains burned into fans' memories. In the earliest promotional art for Pokémon Red and Green, Blastoise appeared with differently shaped cannons than the ones we know now. They were thinner, longer, and angled slightly upward. The change was made late in development, meaning some of the earliest posters show a Blastoise that doesn't match the final design. Tangela, the vine-covered creature, hides a body that has never been seen. Official design notes describe a humanoid shape underneath, wrapped forever in vines. The decision to never reveal it has made Tangela one of the most mysterious Pokémon still in the roster. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, if you bring a Raichu to the trade NPC in Cianwood City, he tells you it evolved into something else entirely. But Raichu has no further evolution. This leftover line suggests a scrapped form or a planned branch that was cut before release. The Pokémon Drowsy is based on the mythological Baku, a dream-eating tapir from Japanese folklore. According to the legend, a Baku can devour nightmares, but if it is still hungry, it may eat pleasant dreams, or even the sleeper's soul. Miss Drevus, the ghost with flowing hair, was the first ghost type introduced outside of the original trio of Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar. Its name comes from mischievous, and its Pokédex notes it enjoys startling people with sudden cries in the night. In the Hoenn region, a rumour spread that Mirage Island could appear east of Pacifidlog Town. Its chance of appearing is tied to hidden values in a player's Pokémon, making it so rare that many trainers went their entire playthroughs without ever seeing it. The Pokémon Mawile looks innocent until it opens the massive jaws on the back of its head. This design is based on Futakuchi Onna, a woman from Japanese folklore cursed with a second, monstrous mouth hidden beneath her hair. Pokémon Emerald's Battle Frontier was one of the most ambitious facilities ever created. Each building introduced unique battle rules, but tucked in the game's data are references to facilities that were never finished, suggesting the frontier was meant to be even larger. Spiritomb, the strange ghost and dark type, is bound to a stone called the Odd Keystone. Its Pokédex number in Diamond and Pearl was 442, and its lore says it was created from 108 souls, a reference to Buddhist mythology, where 108 represents earthly temptations. Absol, the disaster Pokémon, is feared in villages because it appears before earthquakes, storms, and floods. Its Pokédex makes clear it does not cause them, but the superstition has made Absol a scapegoat across generations. The Pokémon Regigigas drags continents with ropes according to its lore. Though this mythical feat sounds impossible, its design is based on Shinto shrine guardians, tying it to real-world imagery of titanic beings that shape landscapes. Frostlass, the icy ghost, is said to come from the spirit of a woman who perished in a snowstorm. Its kimono-like shape hides a sinister detail. It freezes its prey and keeps the frozen bodies as decoration. A glitch in Pokémon Yellow lets Pikachu surf. By connecting to Pokémon Stadium on the Nintendo 64, you can unlock a minigame where Pikachu rides waves, complete with its own sprite animation. For many players, this was the first time they ever saw surfing Pikachu outside of promotional material. Zoroark was the first Pokémon revealed for Generation Phi, introduced in the film Zoroark Master of Illusions before the games even launched. Its illusion ability was marketed as a revolutionary mechanic, hiding its true form until battle. The Pokémon Shedinja appears as an empty shell after Nincada evolves. Its Pokédex says, "Looking into the crack on its back will steal your soul." Yet the game gives it only one hit point, making it both the frailest and one of the eeriest designs in the franchise. Chandelure, the Chandelier Pokémon, is described as consuming the spirits of those it burns. Its lore goes so far as to say wandering souls are drawn to its light, only to be extinguished. A Pokémon shaped like a household object, given one of the darkest backstories in the series. The Pokémon Dynamo line in Generation 5 has an odd quirk. Despite being based on eels, Dynamo itself has no weaknesses until it evolves. Its levitate ability cancels out ground, leaving the tiny eel immune to all common counters. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, the Trick House holds puzzles across multiple rooms, but there is a final locked door that never opens. Data mining shows it was never coded to lead anywhere. It stands as a silent reminder of cut content. The Pokémon Relicanth, a deep-sea fish, mirrors the real-world Coelacanth, an animal scientists believed extinct for millions of years until one was discovered in 1938. The developers based its rarity on that rediscovery, hiding it in Hoenn's waters. Yamask carries a mask that resembles its human face from when it was alive. Some entries say that when it looks at the mask, it cries. The implication that Yamask is the spirit of a dead human makes it one of the few Pokémon directly tied to people in such a grim way. The Unova region's subway bosses, Ingo and Emmet, were introduced in black and white, but in Pokémon Legends, Arceus, only Ingo appears, transported back in time with no memory. His sudden reappearance raised countless questions that were never fully explained. The Pokémon Litwick seems harmless, but its lore says it drains the life of people and guides them toward the grave. Its flame is said to burn brighter as it consumes more energy, meaning the cuter it looks, the more dangerous it becomes. A fisherman in Pokémon Diamond and Pearl has 6 Magikarp on his team. This battle is infamous for being both comical and tedious, as Magikarp often know only splash and tackle. Despite its silliness, it became a fan favorite encounter. The Pokémon Phantump is described as the spirit of a child who died in the forest, reborn inside a rotting tree stump. Its friendly smile disguises one of the bleakest backstories in all of Pokémon. Kamala is unique in that it spends its entire life asleep. The Pokédex says it is born asleep, lives asleep, and dies asleep, never once waking. Trainers who bond with it interact only with its dreams. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, Ball Guy appears in stadium lobbies, handing out special Pokéballs. His giant costume and exaggerated cheerfulness made him a surprise cult figure, with official merchandise released after fans embraced him. Mr. Mime's evolution, Mime Jr., was introduced in Generation 4. However, when Mime Jr. evolves, it becomes Mr. Mime, even if it's female. This creates the oddity of Mrs. Mime, a quirk never addressed in-game. The Pokémon Durant and Heatmore were designed as natural enemies. Durant, an iron ant, is hunted by Heatmore, an anteater whose fiery tongue can melt steel. Their predator-prey relationship is one of the few explicitly described in the Pokédex. In Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, some dungeons are said to warp reality itself. Floors rearrange endlessly, and time behaves differently. The lore suggests these distortions are caused by the collapse of balance in the Pokémon world, making even the ground dangerous. The Pokémon Drampa is described as gentle with children, but if it sees one being bullied, it goes on a rampage. Its lore contrasts sharply with its sleepy dragon design, making it one of the few Pokémon defined by its moral compass. Cofagrigus has an entry that describes it as swallowing people whole, then turning their bodies into mummies. The creepy golden coffin has a grin stretched across its mask, a disturbing contrast to the horror it represents. The Lake Guardians, Uxie, Mesprit and Azelf, are based on concepts of knowledge, emotion and willpower. Uxie's entry warns that anyone who looks into its eyes will lose their memories, suggesting the potential to erase history itself. In Pokémon Platinum, the Distortion world is unlike any other map. Waterfalls flow sideways, gravity bends in impossible ways, and the camera drifts across floating platforms. The surreal space was built specifically to showcase Giratina's unnatural power. The Pokémon Parasect is overtaken entirely by the fungus growing on its back. Its Pokédex says the host is essentially dead, moving only under the control of the parasite. What looks like a single creature is actually a corpse animated by another life form. In Pokémon X and Y, the character AZ is revealed to be over 3,000 years old, cursed with immortality after creating a weapon that ended a war. His towering design and tragic backstory make him one of the most somber figures in the series. The Pokémon Eternatus in Sword and Shield is described as a gigantic alien dragon that crashed to Earth thousands of years ago. Its body radiates an energy called Dynamax, making it the source of the very phenomenon central to the games. Claydol, a floating figure with multiple eyes, is based on dog figurines unearthed in Japan. The real artifacts date back thousands of years, connecting the design of a Pokémon directly to archaeological history. The Pokémon Malamar hypnotizes prey with flashing lights on its body. One Pokédex entry even suggests it has been used to manipulate humans during wars, turning its eerie design into a weapon of control. In the anime, Sabrina's psychic powers once transformed Ash and his friends into dolls, trapping them inside a toy city. This surreal and unsettling episode remains one of the creepiest moments in the series. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, there is a locked gate in the national park that serves no purpose. Players speculated for years about what it might hide, but data mining revealed it was simply a leftover from early development, a remnant of a plan that never reached completion. The Pokémon Relicanth, though treated as a curiosity, is tied directly to unlocking the Regi trio in Hoenn. Alongside Wailord, it forms part of the Braille puzzle that opens the sealed chambers. Its placement was no accident. An ancient fish and a massive whale chosen as keys to ancient golems. In Pokémon X and Y, Lumio City hides several inaccessible doors. One leads to a room where a mysterious ghostly girl appears, silently telling you that you are not the one before disappearing. These rooms serve no other purpose, left behind like fragments of a story never told. The Pokémon Excelgor evolves from Shelmet when traded with a Carablast. The lore says Carablast devours Shelmet's shell, leaving it to adapt into a ninja-like creature. This is one of the strangest and most unsettling trade evolutions in the series. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, the abandoned ship drifts along the currents, filled with broken rooms and eerie music. It's one of the only places in the games where you can find the scanner, an item tied to hidden side quests. The derelict vessel feels haunted, though the games never say it outright. The Pokémon Cofagrigus had its name temporarily censored on global trading platforms because an automated filter mistakenly flagged it. For a time, it was one of the few Pokémon that couldn't be traded online by name. The Pokémon Galissopod, introduced in Alola, has the unique ability Emergency Exit, forcing it to switch out when its health drops. Its design and ability are inspired by giant isopods that live in the deep sea, known for fleeing quickly when threatened. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, the underground allowed players to dig for treasures and fossils, but buried in the data are unused sprites of items that never appeared, suggesting more content was planned. The Pokémon Darmanitan has a Zen mode form, that transforms it into a stone Buddha-like statue when its health drops. Its lore connects it to Dharma dolls, which symbolize perseverance, blending mythology and religious imagery into a battle mechanic. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, there is an abandoned thrifty megamart filled with ghost types. Hidden within are notes from a girl who vanished long ago. Her diary entries left behind as unsettling flavor text. The Pokémon Jirachi is said to awaken for only 7 days every 1,000 years. During that time, it is said to grant wishes. In Pokémon Colosseum and XD, event distributions made it one of the rarest Pokémon to obtain legitimately. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the wild area occasionally spawns Pokémon far above the player's level. Early explorers would stumble into battles they couldn't possibly win, an intentional design to make the world feel dangerous and untamed. The Pokémon Drampa is described as kind to children, but it goes on violent rampages when it sees bullying. This lore paints it as one of the only Pokémon defined by moral judgment, not just instinct. In Pokémon Black and White, Opelucid City is rendered differently depending on the version. In Black, it appears modern and high-tech, while in White, it takes on a rustic, traditional appearance, a rare case of the same city existing in 2 different visual styles. The Pokémon Runerigus was introduced in Galar as a cursed evolution of Yamask. Its body is a shifting slab of stone, covered in runes that move across its surface. Its lore ties it to burial practices and ancient curses. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, Drifblim's Pokédex says it carries people away when it grabs them. Entire groups of Drifblim are described as vanishing into the horizon, taking their passengers to places unknown. The Pokémon Electrode is infamous for disguising itself as an item. In later games, the Hisuian form was created to explain this behavior, showing how over time, lore evolved to justify a frustrating game mechanic. In Pokémon Crystal, the Battle Tower appeared for the first time, introducing players to competitive-style challenges against high-level trainers. Though simple by today's standards, it was the foundation for the sprawling facilities seen in later games. The Pokémon Shedinja, fragile with only 1 hit point, has an ability called Wonder Guard that makes it immune to most attacks. This bizarre balance of invincibility and fragility has made it a cult favorite among players who enjoy exploiting unusual mechanics. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, Alchemy has dozens of forms based on how long and in which direction the player in Generation 2 shiny Pokémon were introduced, but the word shiny never appeared in the games themselves. Players coined the term after noticing the sparkle animation. The developers later adopted it officially, making fan terminology canon. The Pokémon Sigilyph patrols the same route endlessly, said to be protecting an ancient city long gone. Its design is based on the Nazca lines of Peru, geoglyphs visible only from the air, tying it directly to real-world mysteries. In Pokémon X and Y, a girl in the Battle Chateau tells you she's seen something terrifying at night in Lumiose City. She never elaborates, and the game leaves the detail hanging. Fans connect her words to the infamous Ghost Girl event. The Pokémon Dusknoir acts as a guide to the afterlife. Its Pokédex says it takes lost spirits to the next world, using the antenna on its head to receive transmissions from another dimension. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, a hidden mechanic controls honey trees. Each tree has an internal value that determines which Pokémon can appear, and one of those values is so rare that Munchlax spawns in only a handful of specific trees in the entire region. The Pokémon Sableye is based on the Hopkinsville Goblins, a cryptid sighted in Kentucky in the 1950s. Its gemstone eyes and hunched posture are pulled directly from eyewitness descriptions. In Pokémon Emerald, Mirage Tower contains both the root fossil and the claw fossil, but once you pick one, the other sinks into the sand forever. It's one of the few examples of a permanent choice embedded in the main story. The Pokémon Gorgeist is said to sing in eerie voices on moonless nights. Its cries are described as curses, chilling anyone who listens. Despite this, it's often portrayed as playful in spin-offs, hiding the darker edges of its lore. In Pokémon Red and Blue, if you talk to the old man in Viridian City before surfing along Cinnabar's coast, you can trigger Missing No. This glitch comes from the game overwriting your name into wild encounter data. It's a window into the fragile wiring of the code. The Pokémon Musharna emits dream mist, said to be visible representations of dreams themselves. In the games, this mist was once tied to the Dream World feature, allowing players to send Pokémon to an online realm. The Pokémon Golett and Golurk are based on golems from Jewish folklore. Golurk's lore says it was built by an ancient civilization to protect humans, a parallel to the legends of protectors shaped from clay. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, the Ultra Beasts are described as invaders from another dimension. Their designs intentionally resemble creatures from horror and science fiction rather than traditional Pokémon, giving them an uncanny presence. The Pokémon Magcargo has one of the most exaggerated Pokédex entries. It claims its body temperature is hotter than the surface of the sun. If taken literally, standing near it should vaporize everything instantly, yet in-game, it remains a sluggish snail. In the anime, the giant Dragonite from the early series remains unexplained. Standing taller than buildings, it appeared in one episode and was never addressed again, leaving fans to wonder if enormous Pokémon are more common than the games admit. The Pokémon Yamper, designed as a corgi, has an ability called Ball Fetch that retrieves Pokeballs if a throw fails. It's one of the few abilities that directly interacts with trainer actions outside of battle. In Pokémon Legends Arceus, the ancient Pokeballs are made of apricorns with steam valves. When a Pokémon is captured, a puff of steam escapes, showing how crude the earliest devices were compared to modern technology. The Pokémon Cacturne is described as stalking prey across deserts, waiting until nightfall to strike. Its hollow stare and scarecrow-like design embody the fear of being followed, giving a grass type one of the eeriest backstories. The Regi trio, Regis, Registeel and Regirock, are said to be sealed away because they were too dangerous. Their braille puzzles in Ruby and Sapphire required real-world knowledge to solve, a puzzle so unusual that many players struggled without guides. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, Rotom was hidden in the old chateau. Its appliance forms were introduced later, but early players only knew it as a mischievous ghost. The choice to hide a unique electric and ghost type in an optional room made it feel like a true secret. The Pokémon Basculin was largely ignored until Legends Arceus, where it received an evolution called Basculegion. Its lore says it's formed from the souls of its fallen kin carried forward into battle. In Pokémon Platinum, Looker gives you items but never reveals his full past. His trenchcoat, accent, and mysterious demeanor fueled endless speculation until later games finally confirmed he belonged to the International Police. The Pokémon Tynamo, an eel with no weaknesses, baffled competitive players. With Levitate and no exploitable type matchups, it created strange edge cases where certain teams had no reliable way to damage it. In Pokémon Black and White, the Relic Castle stretches deep beneath the desert sands, but much of it is inaccessible. Data mining shows that additional floors and chambers were planned, with layouts that were removed before release, leaving the final castle feeling like only a fragment of what it was meant to be. The Pokémon Gardevoir, elegant and serene, is said to create small black holes to protect its trainer. While this ability is never shown in-game, the Pokédex insists it would sacrifice itself without hesitation, giving it one of the most dramatic lore descriptions in the entire series. In Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, an NPC in the Sevi Islands mentions a place called the Berry Forest. Inside, a wild hypno waits, said to be frightening the local children. The encounter references its darker Pokédex entries about abducting kids, making it one of the few times the lore and gameplay intersect so directly. The Pokémon Heatran is one of the rare legendaries with agenda, found deep within Stark Mountain. Its molten body is said to be born from the planet's fiery core. Its ability to be male or female sets it apart from nearly all other legendary Pokémon. In the anime, the Ghost of Maiden's Peak episode features a spectral woman who lures men to the cliffside. This story, inspired by Japanese ghost tales, remains one of the most haunting filler episodes, blending cultural folklore into the Pokémon world. The Pokémon Durant, an iron-plated ant, is constantly hunted by Heatmore, an anteater with a fiery tongue. This predator-prey relationship is one of the rare explicit food chain dynamics written directly into Pokémon lore. In Pokémon Platinum, the distortion world is one of the only areas where the camera moves freely in 3D, ignoring the usual grid-based movement. Waterfalls flow sideways, platforms float, and Giratina rules a realm that defies all physical logic. The Pokémon Trevenant is described as punishing those who harm forests. Its lore claims it traps trespassers and leads them to wander until they perish. Behind its gentle tree design lies one of the most vengeful Pokédex entries. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, players can find a mysterious man in a hotel who claims he's from 300 years in the future. His dialogue has no quest, no resolution, and no further explanation, leaving him as one of Alola's strangest mysteries. The Pokémon Froslass wears a kimono-like shape and a hollow mask for a face. It is said to freeze its victims and display them as decorations inside icy caves. This chilling detail ties it to Yuki-onna, the snow woman of Japanese folklore. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the Crown Tundra introduces Peony, a character with over-the-top enthusiasm for exploration. His eccentric personality hides small clues in dialogue that reference lore from across the series, rewarding players who read closely. The Pokémon Voltorb resembles a Pokeball, but its lore claims it may have been born from one exposed to a mysterious energy. This strange explanation implies it may not be a natural Pokémon at all, but a technological accident given life. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, the Shoal Cave changes with the tide. At low tide, the caves are dry and accessible. At high tide, water fills the chambers, revealing completely different paths. This mechanic was unusual for its time, tying exploration directly to the clock. The Pokémon Banette was once an abandoned doll. Filled with hatred, it came to life, and now wanders in search of the child that discarded it. Its zipper mouth and vengeful lore make it one of the most unsettling ghost types. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, a girl in Canalave City tells you about a house where nobody lives. If you visit at night, a ghostly child appears inside. These subtle hauntings make Sinnoh one of the eeriest regions. The Pokémon Golurk is a massive golem powered by an energy core. Its Pokédex says it was built by an ancient civilization to protect humans, and that if its seal were broken, its internal power would run wild, destroying everything around it. In Pokémon Black and White, Nimbasa City's Ferris wheel hides a surprising twist. On certain days, one of your companions will reveal they're a member of Team Plasma during the ride. The cheerful carnival setting becomes a stage for betrayal. The Pokémon Dragapult launches its young Dreepy from its horns like missiles. Its lore notes that the babies enjoy being fired at high speeds, a bizarre detail that makes one of Galar's pseudo-legendaries double as a living aircraft carrier. In the anime, Ash once turned to stone in the first movie, only to be revived by Pikachu's tears. The scene was so emotional that children in theaters openly wept, cementing it as one of the franchise's most unforgettable moments. The Pokémon Chandelure consumes spirits with its ghostly flames. Its Pokédex goes so far as to say wandering souls are drawn irresistibly to its light, a cruel trap for those who approach. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, rare Pokémon called Brilliant versions appear with glowing auras. These encounters are more powerful and yield extra rewards, yet the game never explicitly explains the system. Players only discover it by observing. The Pokémon Jinx has one of the most controversial histories. Its original sprite was black-skinned, leading to accusations of racist imagery. The design was later changed to purple worldwide, permanently altering the character's appearance. In Pokémon Red and Blue, unused code reveals a hidden cry that doesn't belong to any Pokémon. This mysterious leftover sound remains unidentified, fueling speculation that it was tied to a cut species. The Pokémon Kamala clings to its log and never wakes. Its entire existence is defined by sleep, and trainers who bond with it only ever interact with its dreams. A creature alive in body, but never in waking consciousness. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, type. Null was created as an artificial chimera, chained by a mask to suppress its power. When it evolves into Silvally, the mask breaks, symbolizing freedom from its forced creation. The Pokémon Escavalier evolves by stealing Shelmet's shell in a trade. The parasitic nature of this evolution makes it one of the more unsettling examples, where growth is depicted as theft rather than natural transformation. In Pokémon Legends, Arceus, the Hisuian form of Zoroark, is described as a spiteful spirit that protects its kin, even in death. Its white, ghostly fur and blood-red accents make it one of the most haunting regional forms ever introduced. The Pokémon Eternatus is an alien dragon that crashed to Earth eons ago. Its body radiates the energy that creates Dynamax phenomena, making it not only a legendary boss, but the literal source of a core game mechanic. In Pokémon X and Y, the Tower of Mastery is designed in the shape of a giant megastone. The architecture itself is a clue, foreshadowing the power hidden within before the story ever explains it. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, the Ultra Beasts stand apart from any previous Pokémon design. Buzzwole flexes like a bodybuilder, Nihilego resembles a jellyfish, and Kartana is literally origami given life. Their Pokédex entries describe them as invasive life forms from another dimension, treating them less like animals and more like alien intruders. The Pokémon Shedinja is one of the strangest evolutions. When Nincada evolves, it leaves behind its husk, and that husk becomes its own Pokémon. The Pokédex warns that if you look into the crack on Shedinja's back, your soul will be stolen. Despite this sinister lore, it remains one of the most fragile creatures in the game, surviving only with a single hit point. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, the old chateau hides more than just Rotom. Ghostly figures of a little girl and a butler appear in certain rooms, vanishing when approached. They have no dialogue, no role in the story, and no explanation. Their presence remains one of Sinnoh's eeriest mysteries. The Pokémon Banette was once a discarded doll, brought to life by a curse. Its lore says it wanders endlessly, seeking the child who threw it away, driven by hatred. Its zipper mouth and lifeless eyes make it one of the darkest ghost-type designs. In Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, Mirage Island is one of the rarest phenomena. The island only appears if the hidden values of one of your Pokémon match the daily number generated by the game. The odds are so low that many players went their entire lives without ever seeing it. The Pokémon Sigilyph patrols the same path endlessly, said to be guarding the ruins of an ancient civilization. Its design, inspired by the Nazca lines in Peru, reflects the idea of symbols only visible from the sky, tying Pokémon directly to real-world archaeology. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, the Isle of Armor introduced Kubfu, a legendary Pokémon that bonds with the player before evolving. Unlike most legendaries, Kubfu is treated like a starter, emphasizing trust and training rather than a dramatic encounter. The Pokémon Gorgeist has Pokédex entries that describe its singing in eerie voices during moonless nights. Its cries are said to curse those who hear them. Despite its playful pumpkin-like design, its lore aligns it with some of the darkest spirits in the franchise. In Pokémon Black and White, the Ferris wheel in Nimbasa City hides a twist. On certain days, the person who rides with you reveals they're part of Team Plasma. It's a small but startling moment, blending cheerful scenery with sudden betrayal. The Pokémon Drifblim floats gently on the wind, but its Pokédex warns that it carries people away. Entire groups are described as disappearing, taken wherever the breeze leads. What looks like a harmless balloon hides one of the most disturbing reputations of all. In Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, The CVI Islands introduce lore tying Johto, Kanto, and new areas together. Yet several NPCs mention places outside the islands that were never included, remnants of cut content that broadened the world but were never finished. The Pokémon Runerigus evolves from Yamask when exposed to cursed energy in Galar. Its body is a moving slab of stone covered in runes, and its lore says it carries the painful memories of those who once died from its curse. In Pokémon Emerald, the Battle Frontier stood as one of the most ambitious post-game features ever made. Each facility used different battle rules, and tucked inside the code were hints at other battle arenas that never appeared. Even incomplete, the Frontier remains a fan favorite. The Pokémon Mimikyu wears a ragged Pikachu disguise, hoping to make friends. The Pokédex warns that seeing its true form is deadly. Its tragic design, a lonely spirit imitating a mascot, turned it into one of the most beloved monsters of Generation 7. In Pokémon X and Y, the Tower of Mastery stands tall above Shalor City. Its shape resembles a megastone, foreshadowing the power within. This architectural detail is never acknowledged in dialogue, but the symbolism is clear. The Pokémon Relicanth was designed after the Coelacanth, a real fish once thought to be extinct. Its rarity in Hoenn reflects the surprise of rediscovering a species that was believed lost for millions of years. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, the abandoned thrifty Megamart is filled with ghost types. Inside, players can read a scattered diary that describes someone's growing madness, but the story cuts off abruptly, leaving its fate unresolved. The Pokémon Absol is misunderstood as a bringer of disaster. In truth, it senses oncoming quakes and storms and tries to warn people. Its design, sharp and foreboding, doomed it to be feared for the very role that made it a protector. In Pokémon Red and Blue, the Safari Zone operates on steps instead of time. Each step ticks down the counter until the game ends. Clever players discovered ways to minimize movement and maximize encounters, effectively turning the area into a strategy puzzle. The Pokémon Calyrex, introduced in the Crown Tundra, is a once great king fallen into obscurity. Its ability to fuse with its steeds Glastria or Spectria makes it one of the most unique legendaries, blending themes of memory, loss, and restoration. In Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, honey trees are programmed with hidden encounter slots. Only 4 trees in the entire region can ever spawn Munchlax, making it one of the most obscure catches in the games. The Pokémon Escavalier evolves by stealing Shelmet's armor during a trade. This parasitic evolution makes it one of the few examples where evolution is portrayed as theft rather than growth. In Pokémon Legends, Arceus, Hisuian Zoroark is described as embodying spite. Its snowy white fur and crimson details give it a haunting, otherworldly look. Its lore says it curses those who harm it, blending beauty and menace. The Pokémon Eternatus is described as a colossal alien dragon that crashed to Earth long ago. Its body emits the energy that causes Dynamax phenomena, making it the origin of one of Sword and Shield's defining mechanics. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Sabrina merges with her Pokémon during a psychic battle. The surreal panel shows her fused with an Alakazam, a detail far darker than anything the anime or games would ever depict. The Pokémon Claydol is based on dog figurines unearthed in Japan, relics from thousands of years ago. Its floating eyes and ancient design tie directly into archaeology, making it one of the most literal myth-to-Pokémon creations. The Pokémon Toxtricity comes in 2 forms, amped and low-key, determined by its nature. Their designs are inspired by punk rock and grunge musicians, turning a Pokémon into a cultural homage. In Pokémon Sword and Shield, brilliant Pokémon sometimes appear glowing with aura. They're stronger and drop rare items, yet the game never teaches this system, leaving observant players to piece it together. And if you enjoyed learning these facts, you might want to subscribe. That way you'll have even more to listen to the next time you're ready to relax.